Okay, what about now?
Oh, that sounds better.
Oh, perfect. Nice. Cool. Okay, awesome. So I think we can start now. So hello all and good evening. It's 7 p.m. from Berlin. I think now you can hear me or no? So
Yeah, we can.
okay, okay, cool. So it's 19 or 7 p.m. In Berlin. So good evening, good morning from wherever you're joining. Thanks for joining today. And this is a very exciting call for us today because we are working on a couple of new things that we want to show off. And that includes a new CLI that we are working on. And that's something Flo is gonna demonstrate and talk about and show it. And then we will talk about what's coming next on Zitadel. And in the end, we will have a Q&A section as well, where if you guys have any questions based on what we discussed, you can ask it. We also have a couple of engineers in the call. So at any point, if any one of you have any kind of questions, you can just ask away it in the chat. And either me or anyone from the engineering team can look it up and respond you in there. Um, so before we begin, I just want to introduce myself. So I am Rajat. I'm the one who you see on the Discord all the time. I'm the one who takes your question or sometimes miss it, but I'm the one who answer it. So I'm the community engineer here at Citadel. And with me today on my left side is Flo, who's going to be doing and talking about what we're going to see today. So I will mute myself and hand over the mic to Flo and let him do his thing. So I will go mute and yeah, Flo, you can do your thing.
So, hello everyone. I'm going to do my thing as Ramchat called it. Mostly, I have some exciting news because we started silently working in the background on something that should refresh the developer experience from Citadel on the ends, where we had some let's say not so greatly polished experiences. And so the team spent quite a bit of time on figuring out, hey, how can we make the lives of developers and also the lives of agents essentially easier to add registration, login, user management, and all these bits into modern web applications, right? Because it's kind of the premise. How do you do that in a really, really fast way? And so I recently shared a video of like, how long does it take you to add a working registration and login page to a Next.js app? We're quickly going to reproduce that so that you don't see it. So it should also work when the demo gods are nice with me. But the whole idea is like of, hey, how fast can I bootstrap a registration and login into a web app, right? So that's kind of the premise. And we thought, hey, what's the common denominator these days? And the common denominator to me is actually just a CLI, because a CLI can be instrumented by a human, like a developer, but also it can be an agent like business can actually do the same for you, right? And so that's kind of what we're trying to do. Screen sharing will start in a moment. So, because then I'm done rambling and then I'm more into the showing piece. But before that, I just wanted to quickly share what's going to happen. So let me quickly start the screen sharing here. My entire screen here. Let's go. I hope it's better now. Otherwise, I need to make it really, really, really big. But I hope. Okay. Yeah. What I wanted to do essentially is run the first command here. Much better. Perfect. So, I mean, it's a classic npx command. Add Citadel, the package CLI is what we're going to download. We use the alpha channel because it has not yet been properly published, right? So don't get confused by that. What happens if I run that command? It essentially just downloads our Citadel server to your machine. It does not need Docker. It's just a Go binary compiled for multiple platforms. It starts it and gives you kind of a working Citadel already locally to do things. So with that said, so we now have a locally deployed server. We can also inspect the log files by calling the logs function here. So we know, hey, that Citadel is actually running here, which is good. And then we can kind of tell it, hey, okay, next I want to kind of bootstrap something, right? So I want to not only deploy Citadel locally, You can also use the cloud service at one point, but you can also deploy it locally. I want to add it actually to some front-end framework of choice. And so we're just going to do that. Let me quickly remove the framework part here, because there is an interactive CLI. We can also ask it what we want to deploy. So we have skeletoned out multiple frameworks at the moment. So it's Next, React, and Angular, and these things. And I will happily share more on the inner workings of that. But let's just take Next.js for the sake of simplicity quickly here. It asks me, hey, yeah, now I have a next project schedule, scaffolded, support 3000, okay, yeah, let's do that. It starts to scaffold all the things that we need for Citadel, and I will share a little bit about that in a minute. It downloads dependencies. I mean, that's a process you all know. It's just downloading Next dependencies right now. And it should be up and ready with a little bit of broken page here, where I can run the whole Next.js project. So with that said, if all worked, I now have a locally working Next.js project that got the Citadel sign-in and create account and profile pages injected or added per se. And if I now go here for create account, yeah, well, I get the classic create account view. So let's just do that quickly. I can fill in whatever I want. Let's quickly use a password, a super secure whatever password. I'm signed in. Oh, that's there. And if you don't trust me, I can also sign out here. And I can log in again, sign in, super beautifully secure passkeys. Passkeys are naturally supported already here, yes. So what happened here, and you see it's working, and it's all locally right now, is that our CLI essentially just started a local server, and the CLI scaffolded the UI components, which are primarily web components with that we add to the project of choice. And it also created the necessary resources in Citadel. And that's kind of a new take here, because as you have seen, I've never done any sign up, no registration, no nothing. I can do that all locally without any kind of ceremony. I don't need to go through a sign up flow to actually start using Citadel and all these funny bits, because we thought, hey, if I'm a developer, I want to show that it works relatively fast in order to get a good idea. So that was kind of the precursor of the whole CLI that we built out. So, but that's only where the journey starts. So let's quickly start inspecting what we have here, because I mean, that's a classic Next.js project here. What I think is worth sharing is more in the meat here is, for example, there is a zitadel.json file. And the zitadel.json file essentially is just the definition of, hey, I have now a kind of working login environment, right? And I have some settings for that. I might have a preview domain. I have framework. I have a project ID. The idea is more in of what you might know from that. You essentially can build your login locally, you can scaffold it, you can test it, and then kind of deploy it and on your provider of choice. So that's the idea here. But there is more, because that's where the journey starts. So let us inspect a little bit further here. I'm giving you pointers first, and then I'm going to stop talking for a minute, because maybe you're interested in things. But what we also have is a .citadel folder, and that .citadel folder will give you primitives like flows, schemas, and also templates will follow in here. What we mean by that is essentially, we didn't want to stop at just making a CLI for Citadel. What we actually wanted is the whole registration and login and profile experience should become more of an auth code owned by your web application. And so you will be able to also alter things like, for example, the login flow and how pages render. So let me quickly explain what I mean by that. So right now we have here like a create account page. This thing it has fields, right? And so these fields essentially are just a liquid.js template that the server stores for you. And so your UI can render whatever you need there. You can change the order of the buttons. You can change the order of the flows, meaning like, hey, I want to collect the username first. On a second page, I want to collect the password. So that's all just the configuration that you can co-locate to your application. It's essentially just a JSON file that you can edit locally and then just upload to the Citadel server. So before I proceed, I see there is a question. Does this require Docker? No, actually, it does not right now. We made the decision that Docker will be still really important, but for the local experience, you can just download the binary. It's essentially just an npm packet. We're also going to release it as a GitHub thing. But so, what is all of it? Yes, it will support Docker. It actually does already. It does not, though. Let me first go through some questions. Look, will it support Docker? Absolutely. There is actually already a Docker extension here. So let me quickly pull up the CLI. A CLI start flag, I think, should actually have, if I remember correctly, and we should have a runtime Docker here already. See? So it's actually the Citadel. Yeah, I mean, if you have already 8080 in use, that you might be. We need to improve the process there, and I think. But let me give pointers here. On the Sebastian B's question, this does not have anything to do with native logins like for mobile apps, right? It has, but now the big but comes around. What we kind of built now with Citadel is a flow engine internally, and let me have like a visualizer for that. And so while it's not 100% representative anymore, that's how a flow looks like. So a flow, like the definition of like how does a login page look like and what steps does it have, consists of three things. I surely can zoom in a little bit. Let me. Better now? I can also make the window a little bit bigger here. So, perfect. So I know it's a little bit big now. Hopefully it does not hurt your eyes. What we have now is three important artifacts from the Citadel server side that kind of influence the behavior of the thing that renders the login, right? And the reason why I say the thing that renders the login has to do with the fact that we right now publish SDKs for web applications, but there is not really a problem of creating an SDK that takes the definition here, like the JSON file, and renders it also in native frameworks for UIs in mobile apps, right? So you could also build a Swift wrapper around it to make it native or for iOS, for example. Because in essence, what happens is there's a contract, and the contract has three main elements that are important. And the three main elements essentially define the login has a user schema because somehow it needs to know how that user looks like. And then we have steps, like, and these steps have fields, right? And it has actions like what you can do. It has single sign-on providers defined. And the idea essentially is that the flow that the user takes to go through, let's say the login, is solely defined as a JSON file that the Citadel server binary kind of stores for your UI. And so when your UI initiates a login process, it just calls a server and tasks it, hey, I have a new login, tell me what I need to render, and the server will just hand it back. Like it's a backend driven UI of sorts. And one of the artifacts again is like the flow, like the process, what things to render in what order, is just a JSON file. And the reason why we took that route essentially is what a developer can add this file to the web app or to the mobile app's Git repository and just deploy it alongside it, and also make changes. And also agents can do changes if you like to use codecs. So the whole idea is like to bring how the experience of the login shapes front and center to your application rather than have it somewhere else. And another, I think, important artifact in this thing is user schemas. Get a lot of asks for user schemas over the course of time where we operated Citadel. And it took us a little bit to unravel that one. But essentially what you now have is you can also, besides that you can control which fields get rendered in what order, you can also define, hey, how does a user even need to look like? Because not all requirements are the same. Some people want to have a first name, some want to have a gender, some a birthday, some just want to have an ID. So what we have now essentially is you can define your own user schema, and you can also define multiple of those, so that your login can really kind of define what you want to do. Like you can tell your registration page, hey, I just want to collect the username. That's all I need, and the passkey. Yeah, you can totally go and build that. And the third big artifact, before I jump to the question in the chat, is the templates. Templates meaning inside the login flow, like when you render a page that kind of is there for, let's say, for collecting a username and password, you might want to change the order of the fields. Like maybe you want to have one field before the other, and you can totally do that by rearranging this Liquid.js template. So you can change the text, you can change errors, you can add things. So the whole idea is the three predominant parts is the flow that defines what things can happen in what order, the schema which defines what are the data fields available for the user, and the template which defines, hey, which buttons or texts are going to be rendered in what order. So that's the bottom line of it. And there's more to share, but I'm quickly jumping to a questionnaire. So Ahmed, so if I understand correctly, this decouples login flows from login styling. What about the custom fields like country? Yeah, well, it absolutely, it kind of decouples, let's say, the state machine and the guarantees that certain things are there, like the security bits and pieces, from the experience. So I like to think of it this way. You have the UI that renders some things, and these things should be totally controllable by your native technology stack. Like if you want to use Next.js, do Next.js, and use whatever means are there to kind of add a login component, add a registration component to your app. If you then want to kind of build into, let's say, the registration flow where you want to collect the country of a user, well, it's easy. Just extend the user schema to include that key and tell that the template to actually render that field, and then you're all good. That's kind of the whole idea. So you get control while the server knows what you need to do. Like the backend tells the UI what to render, but the UI can define whatever it wants in that sense. Oh, Jacob has a good question. How much codex vibe coding is used, and how can we ensure that vibe coding features are not creating new bugs and security bugs? Oh, well, that's always, I mean, the contra and pro and contras of AI usage. That's a big one. Let's say the prototype, I would spit the ball here, but I think it's like 20% code that we kind of, maybe 20-30% that goes generated by the help of AI. So I can be honest here, the team, but it's like close to 30 engineers. There's a bunch of them. Some prefer Claude, some prefer Codex, some prefer because I think the general sentiment there is more like we're not telling Codex to hey, build us an identity system. That's not what's going on here, because we already built identity systems. We kind of know what the problem space beyond that problem. Yeah, so before I dive into the whole AI side here too much, because there's plenty of things, I think I want to iterate over a pin here. So what's going on, right? Where is my terminal? And there it is. So let me quickly look at it. I think with the current version, we still have an empty Citadel folder basically, because yes, we store the defaults right now on the server side, but that's going to change in the next few days, and that's kind of when we actually also want to publish it properly. So that's the thing. How should you think about the whole thing? What is it? Yeah, because that's other migration guides publishing from older or Citadel versions. Yes, so that's where I wanted to go with the story now, because there is like the current version that's stable, that you should absolutely rely on if you do anything production, is certainly still Citadel before. So let me stop sharing here for a moment. If you need production grade software that's well maintained, has a good security reputation, gets fixed and actually used, use version 4 and upwards, because that's still the thing that works. What's going to happen here is we kind of built the CLI and the new API on the sideline, because the big chunk of work actually did fall into the problem space of user schemas. Because it's not exactly an easy task to build out a relational, to build out a system that has the benefits of a relational data system, meaning you can link things to a user like permissions and all these funny bits, with a flexible schema for the users at the same time. Because these are kind of coherently at fight in typical databases, right? So we need to make quite a bit of work behind the curtain of Citadel to make that work. And we ultimately settled for, hey, let's build a new storage layer into that. So what you essentially will see is that Citadel does still store events, but the way we store users is kind of special, in a sense of we use a concept called entity attribute value tables, meaning the database can just collapse the user in any way or form that you actually want to have. So if you want to add a first name field, add a first name field. If you want to add an identifier that your business application needs, or an identifier like a customer CRM record, you can add that also to the user schema. Our implementation does not care too much anymore, but that's the big piece that actually took a quite big chunk of work. And we are certainly having a migration path from what you currently see to this newer approach. And the answer from our end will typically be like, hey, yeah, we can also create default schemas that kind of reflect what we currently have, right? But then you kind of, when you switch from the current version of Citadel to the kind of preview what it is now, there is certainly will be a point where you kind of need to apply the defaults that we had before. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say here. Yeah. So let me crunch through the questions a little bit and then give you more insights on the big scheme here. So basically, the user schema part, I think I covered. Are these flows purely for writing data into Citadel and registering users and storing the data in Citadel? Can the forms will also hit your backend, or you want to complex scenario vectors hitting the Citadel API stuff? Actually, what happens here is when you a registration, let's take an example of the registration form. If the registration form just adds some fields, the only thing it does essentially is it takes the user schema and does a form post to Citadel's API, right? So your server, like your web app or mobile app, does not need to handle the form post for the registration side. So that's just an HTTP form post. The Citadel server will handle that, will store the right data into the schema, into the database, and then kind of hand you back the user ID. That's kind of how that process works. There is still a Citadel API for resource management in that sense, meaning you want to create a user through an API. Yeah, well, certainly we have a user API. One big change that happened in the preview is that we fully settled on OpenAPI and with a REST kind of notation. The reason for that essentially is schema-less and gRPC is kind of hard to pull off because it's a strictly typed contract language, and it's not that easy to add it to gRPC in that sense. But gRPC, I'll come back to the gRPC JSON transcoding in a minute. But that's what it is right now. Org schemas are not yet supported because that's kind of a preview. We first wanted to test the waters. But yes, there will be schemas for all major resources, essentially. Like if you want to define your org schema, yeah, do that. If you want to define schemas for other things, we absolutely want you to have more control over the data model, because that was kind of one of the weakest links we always had in Citadel. Like that's the reason why we needed to introduce metadata, and then kind of searching metadata was a little bit tricky to pull off in a scalable way. And so we said, okay, why not define schemas for the core resources and let people programmatically alter what they want to store? Meaning if you, we will absolutely allow you to define a schema for your own tenancy model in that sense. So Jacob has a question. Can you describe the new Next Citadel in a couple of sentences so that I can tell my colleagues the short TLDR for our devs? So in essence, what Citadel does now, or this version of Citadel, which is still a preview, right? So don't take it for production runnings here, is we built out a Next.js SDK. A Next.js SDK essentially includes our API, and it essentially includes an internal core SDK, which is mainly built out of lit web components. So what's going to happen essentially is like you add a typical Next.js function to your code, but inside it is a lit component that talks to the Citadel API and figures out, hey, how do I need to render the login page? How do I need to render the registration page and all these funny bits? So you will not have like that the problem anymore of like you need to copy and own all of it. It's more like you can inject the SDK, and the SDK talks to our server, and the CLI talks to our server, and so you kind of can manage all the authentication and schema related things in your source control, and the server will just help the UI understand how to render these bits. That's kind of the drill. So experience is what I call it, like the things that you want to control locally are like branding settings, and then the translation keys, and the, let's say, where the login lives and where the registration lives, and all these things. You can handle them in the source control if your project together. Then the state, like how many users you have and whether they have successfully gone through an registration or through an authentication, all these bits will be stored in the Citadel server essentially. So the security is owned by the server, but the experience is owned by the UI in that sense. That's what we're trying to frame here. So to go down here a little bit, Ahmed also asked, why not gRPC JSON transcoding? Well, it gets a little bit feisty to manage with repeated fields if you will, kind of a flexible schema, because then you have a lot of pollution with repeated fields that are kind of just keys that nobody really understands. So it paints a little bit of a weird picture if you have a strictly typed API that kind of inserts a lot of arbitrary keys just because it does not understand the contract that might change at runtime. So that's a little bit of reason why we moved away from that. I mean, that's the main reason essentially. I'm a big proponent of gRPC, but the DevX is just better the other way in that sense. And latency wise, I mean, we take a toll of like 6-7 milliseconds. Oh no, I'm now also using 6-7. Sorry for that one, but 6-7 milliseconds for JSON encoding, decoding related problems, right? So, but I think that's something we can live with. There's plenty of other opportunities to optimize. Julian asks, what does this all mean for the Citadel node package? Ran into missing, lacking admin management API features a couple of times. Yes, well, so the way that's going down is this preview will we're just working on nailing down, let's say, for example, the user API. And what's going to happen is that the SDKs, let's say, for example, the Next.js SDK, will certainly create user repo for that API. So because it's the funny bit when using OpenAPI here, our core SDK essentially can build out all these convenience functions, and then we can kind of wrap them into framework-specific SDKs so that they're more easily accessible on that end. So it should supersede the node package at one point, not today, because kind of the API structure anyway changes. So there will be a change in that, but our motion flows more towards if you use Next.js, use the Next.js SDK. There is a great user function for you that's kind of just a wrapped version of the core SDK behind the curtain. Yeah. I hope that helps understanding. On Wasabi, we're back to OpenAPI. Yes, that's the bottom line of it. Yes, we also have a code generator. We publish all the things. So yeah, so it should be relatively easy to use. Light Lotus, what will onboarding look like? Will it migrate old versions automatically? We're nailing out the details on that one. So as we have pretty high footprint in self-hosting as an area, well, we're going to look quite deeply into the migration case. Hey, how do you get from Citadel version 4 and whatever version number this next version might have, right? Right now we're calling it the preview. Sometimes we call it the next gen, but in essence, it will be just the next version that comes around with some changes. You certainly will provide a migration path from A to B. And it kind of will depend on what functionality you're going to use, because some things might not be there in day one, but kind of the most important bits will be there quite fast, like user management and the login experience and all these bits. So that's there. But yes, the migration path will need some more work from our end to give you really a concise answer. But we fully strive to, hey, you have version 4 and then migrate to version 5 or whatever it is called. Maybe it's version 7 because we do some things here. The process will involve the most nasty bit will be the part with the schemas again, because we kind of need to change the data model from, hey, you have a strict data model into we have a super flexible data model. And while we can build a migration worker for that one, it's not like rocket science. The piece is more, okay, how do we make it in a mostly frictionless process for people? Because sometimes these things can take time. If you need to migrate millions of users, then, well, you might have some time ahead of you. And so we're still analyzing how much time these migration scenarios will take. And once we have these data points, it's easier to get to a concise answer. Yuri's would be benefits maintaining a blessed end-to-end test suite. Actually, yes, we have a journey E2E test that tests all the frameworks you just saw in the CLI with Playwright tests end-to-end, meaning it starts a local Citadel, it skeletons the framework with the CLI, it tests registration and login flow for passkeys and passwords. That's all a Playwright test. You can totally copy and own that part. So, because that actually makes it way easier in CI environments to also test. It's kind of the reason why we also moved the Citadel binary into an npx package. So you can just download it whenever, like on Vercel, if you do a CI run and you want to test whether these things work, you can just use a local Citadel to just do the test against, right? So that's kind of the idea. What's there? Oh, maybe I'm asking over the boxes. Does lit component imply a lot of client side here instead of server side? No, the lit components just are the hooks in the UI packages that render whatever the server provides in that sense. Backup. Just wanted to say we're so happy we migrated away from Keycloak to Citadel. Oh, we always like to hear that one. Hopefully it stays open source for commercial use in the future too. We have no intention of actually changing our open source heritage and license. The only reason why we built the new preview thing as a separate repository is because it's kind of, we had a hard time fitting all the changed GitHub actions into our mainline repository right now. So it's just down to some annoyances with GitHub actions, in all honesty, nothing else. So and we'll definitely when we'll publish the project in the coming days. And so you can give it a poke, and you will also see how many AI commits we have. So we like to aspire for full transparency here. And at one point, we'll merge it into Citadel. Because we just didn't do that because it introduces a lot of friction in the CI landscape, essentially. I still have some time, right? BuzzyV, for this CLI version that runs from the binary, how configurable is it? Can you inject in things like steps and config files? What's seeding orgs and users? Yes. So the CLI actually has a seed command, yes, because we want to have you automatically manage resources as well. And we completely aspire that you can define a list of users and the CLI will just dump it into the server. If you want to define an organization that, like, you need to bootstrap something like that, you can fully fledge your, for example, test environment in CI. Yeah, create a seed file and just dump all of it into the server through the CLI, because that gives you a programmatically and idempotent way of working with Citadel, and that's kind of where we want to head with the thing. Priorities, yes, no connect RPC anymore. Connect RPC also have the same struggle with the schema-less approach. I mean, I can, as always, I can be wrong here, but the thing is that dynamic field rendering in gRPC is the mainline problem because you just have repeated fields, and that API design looks really weird to me. Like, you just have repeated fields that exist at runtime and not at build time, and that kind of breaks the contract a little bit. I'm sure Joris will have more questions, but we'll come back to that. On Light Lotus, will Next.gen have things like inbuilt forward auth, like example for authentic on the roadmap? The funny bit is, with the new API, it functions the same as forward auth in a sense, because right now it's only a form post. It's like you collect username, password, and it's a form post against Citadel's API, and you get back a session cookie. So the answer is yes, but it's not the same semantically as forward auth, but the process works the same. Let's put it that way. Timeline for all of this. Well, that's the feisty one. So what we're going to do is we're going to publish the preview CLI is already there. What's going to happen in the next few days, we'll publish the repository. The only thing that we're currently waiting on to finalize is that you can manage the flows, like that you can manage the flows and the user schema on your end, and also the Liquid.js templates, so that you can actually own the experience already on that and then try that, and then we're going to publish the whole thing. That should not be that long out. Like, it will be in all a few days. It will not. It's relatively close. It's ironic that I got into gRPC because of Citadel. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know. It's like I'm still a proponent for gRPC. The problem is the FX-wise, it's a little bit a nightmare right now. Even though Connect RPC helped quite a bit, but it's still a little bit a nightmare. By the end of the meeting, can you help me with the group situation? Oh yeah, surely, we can quickly talk about that. BuzzyV, I've always been OpenAPI async API stan. Yes. Yes. I mean, again, I'm still I like gRPC because of its inherently typed and strict nature, but for something flexible, it's a little bit more tricky. Asking bluntly, that's always good. I always ask blunt question. Is there an intention to replace all your UIs with such SDK setup, including console? I want my users to not see it. Actually, yes. So this new preview has also a management UI, right? Like console. That thing is built on the same SDKs that we're sharing with you folks, essentially. So we'll move that into the concept of, hey, we built a user management thing for our console, but the functionality behind it will be provided by the same SDK that you will use in your web app. So you can replicate exactly what kind of the things like profiles and single sign-on connections and all these things, because that's kind of where we want to go with the whole thing. Could you run the issue about need to move away from connect? Obviously, I'd like to understand deeply here. Yeah, I think it's an internal issue, but I can try to put more in writing in public here. But yeah, my timeline is end of the year. Yeah, we try to be fast, so we'll get there. Just give us a few more days, because it's kind of the paradigm shifted severely for us, in a sense of you can own the full experience, right? And the server just helps you render the right thing in the right place. And does the security work, like setting a session cookie and all these funny bits. And that took a little bit to kind of nail that together in a really concise package, because there is a lot of inner workings here. So let me, I mean, we all love CORS, I guess, cost origin resource sharing, right? This was a big pain. So what we did here is, like, if you Citadel can now totally operate behind the curtain as a path on your apps, right? So for example, in local dev, I just spin up my Next.js project, and the dev server just handles that there is a dash underline next-gen path, and that just gets forwarded to the Citadel server. So what happens if you deploy your web app onto Vercel? Well, there is no CORS to be taken care of, because we just route that through proxy infrastructure to the right place. And that kind of solves a lot of pain in modern web development. And also that the binary kind of is so small, it's like the zip file is like 4 megabytes or 8 megabytes right now, I think. So that you can actually just download Citadel the server and run your CI environment against it is kind of the whole spiel. And it even has an embedded PG server, so you don't need to start a database if you don't want. It just takes out a lot of friction out of the process, right? So that's the whole epiphany, is really down to how can we really nail down the developer experience so that humans and machines can work out the experience that fits best their case. That's kind of the aim here. So what did I miss? I had that timeline. The next RPC, yes, we surely can share more about that. I like that that it resonates. Yeah, where is this? So yeah, so I think that's the whole vibe here, right? So in all honesty, the backend code, there is a lot of new things in there, because again, we did so many internal changes, because that schema thing that kind of it was a ground up work thing, essentially. Because it was not easy to fit that into the existing version. But then don't get me wrong, it's absolutely that this preview will supersede the current Citadel that you're using, and it will also become the same loved product, in a sense that will also add the same capabilities, right? Not always in the same favor of fashion, but it's definitely here as an evolution, because it's not like we're going to throw away what made Citadel great. For example, the multi-tenancy model is absolutely 100% again here. So there is also that multi-tenancy fashion of you can run multiple Citadels besides each other. All these funny things, they're here to stay. And also hey, each org can configure their own IDPs for single sign-on. It's also going to be there. So the whole B2B or B2B2C mixed scenario problematic space, we're still going to cover that, because that's what we believe. And we're also going to add in more capabilities to help out to working with agents, because it's also a little bit of pain right now. Even though in identity, I mean, it's kind of a solved problem with delegated and authentication and delegate and impersonated authentication. But we need to kind of make that a little bit more easy to understand for agents. That's kind of also what's going on. So there is a lot of chatter in the chat. Any further questions where I can give you pointers with the whole thing? I know it's a lot. I've been talking for quite a bit now. We're going to change the routes in a I love it already because the 57-second example shows it works. And also a codex agents 5.5 medium and now skeleton, fully working Next.js app with working a login and registration in about 2-3 minutes, which I find really great because I don't need to sign up somewhere in a cloud service like, let's say, like Clerk or WorkOS. I can just make a move and it works. So we're going to add more on that end of the story. Yeah. Any further questions besides groups, things, and the Connect RPC debate, which is still ongoing, but I think we will postpone them for after that. Which one? So email templates. We haven't formulated the complete answer for the email templates, but I can give you what we're trying to do is you should own the template. So like just define whatever you want to send and send it. And it will go 2 ways. One, either you do it from your app or you tell Citadel, hey, I want to send something to someone. That's also a feasibility here. I'll share more on that once we have a clear picture on how to achieve that best. Because the funny inside side story from running a cloud service, email is actually the most abused piece right now. So it's like there's a lot of precautions that we need to think into that problem, like that somebody does not misuse, let's say, a registration flow to send out let's say phishing emails. And that's always a little bit something to think through. And with agentic AI, that has actually gotten worse because some of them are kind of capable to also solve captchas and things. So it's kind of, that's a constant fight on that end that influences the email template question to some extent. But what's the question there? I see a link here. Where points it are there. There's a lot the same. I just been paid a lot. With all this awesome power being given to dev support owning his host, can we also own the email template as part of? That's the same. Pays into the same question. Yeah, yes, you should be able to define the template. That's kind of the bottom line. What I'm trying to say. Oh, I'm sorry. It will publish it in 2-3 days. Hang tight. And I need to board a plane tonight, so we just need to tie up some CI loose ends and make sure the licensing is all good and clear. But then we press the button on publishing the project. Yardis, how can I get the IP address or location from the Citadel cloud so I can render the map with the coordinates? You mean like from our current cloud service, or what do you mean by that? Yeah, I mean, for the CLI, and I think that's all I have to say. I'm happy to share more more on the questions, but on the subject of what's going on here with CLI and us building a new preview, it's the bottom line. And I actually look excited forward to that. Any last questions? What can we do and help to support? That's a great question. So where I really like to get inputs is in the part of, so there's two ends of the story here, right? One is how easy and fast can you add Citadel to your web app? That's kind of one part of the story. The other part of the story is, does the maintenance process make sense? And I'm just spitballing now some thoughts that we have internally. So, because how we think it should go down, and we certainly need inputs to validate that part, is if you're like move the new version here into production at one point, you might want to do things like A/B tests. You might want to do things like, hey, I want to change the login flow for a certain customer group. So we thought of a concept like environments. Like a good analogy would be Vercel, right? You have a production deployment on Vercel, but you can also do previews. And we thought, hey, if you do a branch and preview the changes that you made locally and you deploy them, like let's say to Vercel or Netlify or whatever, then that process should also feel smooth in a way that it actually feels just like baked in. And I think we'll need plenty of feedback on that specific process besides the whole experience of changing the flow and changing the schema and changing how the templates look like, because that will be where it starts, but then also how to manage things operationally. That's where we would love to have some input once the thing comes around here. I know Jordi is what you mean, but I need to check with the others. I don't know from the top of my head. Yes, the ops is always the day2. Day2 is kind of important here as well, right? But we'll certainly need inputs on how to get started. Does that feel right? Do you have the right levers to control the experience? That is the first thing that we're going to do. And then, hey, is it also nice to maintain it? Is also quite an important piece. And you could absolutely store an IP in the fancy new user schema. So, okay, I left that part out. Citadel, even though we changed our data model, will still store events, right? So we still will store an audit trail. And yes, the definition of what lands in that audit trail will be one question. Like, and the other thing is what lands on the user, what lands on the session, and all these bits. I cannot give you the 100% super concise answer right now because I don't know all the bits in my head right now. But can you add an IP as a field to the user? Yes, you can, absolutely. But there is also, I think we should debate on some things should be stored as events, some things should be stored as attributes on other elements like sessions and these things. So I think what would be a good thing for me is to clarify a little bit how we intend to do that. And I can give you the top line thoughts here. Citadel is concerned about three primary types of data. One is the stateful data, like the user. Yeah, well, it's just something that needs to be statefully stored. Then there is a session. So these are like transient data points, like things that come and go, like cookies and sessions and all these funny bits. And then there is a third piece. That's the whole auditability, right? Like just understanding what happened over the course of time. So kind of time series data. And what goes where, yeah, well, I think we'll need some more debate on that end. So like I don't have the finally baked answer for you, but the way I see it, yes, a session should carry all the things that are needed for it to work as a session, like the authentication markers and all the things, like what happened on that session exactly. And then audit events should carry most of the other data points that are more for, hey, I want to audit what happened. But I try to give you a more concise answer on that one because it might be a little bit fuzzy, right? But these three categories essentially. Yeah. So yeah, and that was it. If you have questions, feel free. We can open just go chat in Discord here. There is also a GitHub discussion open where we can debate on things. I think that's kind of the best process to interact here. I'm certainly going to look into the ADR. So with that said, that's the thing for today. Feel free to just chat with us.
Thank you, Flo, for the session. And there were a lot of questions in the chat, and I think hopefully most of them were addressed. If not, there is already a thread in the Discord channel itself. You can ask there, where Flo has already shared a demo as well, and you can use that as a reference. And also, the whole call or session, whatever you want to call. It's all recording. So we're gonna put it out on YouTube as well in case you missed it. And then I can make an announcement post whenever the highlight is out. So you can look forward to that. And thank you for your time, Flo, today. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for all joining as well. Yeah, that's it.
Bye bye.
Right. See you guys then. Bye bye.